Now, why are there so many different kinds of closures, and how did you decide what closures to use for your wines?
This, for me, was one of the biggest dilemmas I had at the beginning. I mean, I am amazed about the options and the rationale and the arguments and the lobbyists that are involved from the cork side, from the screw cap side. It's unbelievable. You know, we can put a man on the moon, but we haven't yet worked out how to close a bottle of wine perfectly. And the jury is still out. But there are basically around 5 different types of closures that I could choose. There's the natural cork, which is the obvious way, the way they've been doing it for centuries.
Yeah.
This is aesthetically, for me, the most pleasing way to do it.
Yes.
But it has 2 major faults. One is that you get random oxidization. So corks have elasticity. You know, they come straight from the bark of a cork tree, and you know, every part of that tree is going to be a little bit different from another part. So you end up with a wine that ages differently from another wine, even though they might be from the same vintage, from the same winemaker. So that's called random oxidization.
Okay.
That's one issue. The other issue is what we call corked. When a wine is corked, and that's something that we hear a lot about, but what does it actually mean?
A corked wine, and sometimes people think it means a bottle of wine with a cork in it, but it
Yeah.
actually corked means...
Well, it means that the wine has got, the cork has got a bacteria in called TCA, that's the shortcut, it's a long word.
Yeah.
But basically it's a bacteria that makes the cork go off and makes the wine therefore go off. So it's something that is a wine fault. The cork lobby would have you believe that they're eradicating the bacteria, but it's a bacteria that's in nature, and it's very hard to get rid of it. And so I think these days the numbers is around 5% of corks will be corked, will produce corked wine.
So 5% of bottles with that 100% natural cork will be tainted, will be not very tasty and ruined, essentially.
Exactly. I mean, you can to some extent buy your way out of it, but you know, you're always going to have the risk that the wine will be bad. Okay. And from my perspective, every 100 bottles I sell, 5 bottles tasting bad. That wasn't for me.
It's a big risk.
A big risk. Okay. So the option that another option is a reconstituted cork. This is a brand called Diam. Now these are actually really, really good because they take the natural cork, they break it into tiny particles, they blast it with CO2, which kills that bacteria, and then they reconstitute it with uniform elasticity. So you kind of get rid of the 2 problems and create something which is a pretty good closure.
So it's still cork, but it's human improved cork, essentially.
It's human improved cork.
It's crafted cork.
That's what I use for my red wine, because I think it's the best way of getting the wine to the end user without the risk of any kind of contamination or random oxidization.
Interesting. And what are these closures here?
Well, this is an option that a lot of producers use in Provence. This is a plastic cork, or a rubber kind of cork. Yeah. There are various different brands. That was an option, but I don't like them. They're hard to get out. They're impossible to get back in.
They're impossible to get back in.
And the wine cannot age with these corks.
No, they seem very solid, like solid plastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Essentially.
They're not really the good option. It's the kind of compromise when people know that there's got to be a better way than natural cork, but they don't want to go the full way to, for example, screw cap.
Right. Ooh, and what's that lovely glass one? I just love those. So they're very rare, but
these are quite rare. They're found quite a lot in Germany, and actually in parts of Spain as well. These are just glass corks which look pretty, but I'm not convinced about them because they're expensive.
Yes.
If people leave them in the back of their car and it gets hot, they'll pop off.
Really?
To my father-in-law.
That can't be safe.
I think they're not the best closure, and for sure the wines, because the actual closure is a bit of plastic around the glass. It's not the glass itself. And so these are also prone to many different risks around closing.
Which brings us to
good old screw cap.
Good old screw cap.
Now I use screw cap for my rosé and for my white wines.
Yes.
Aesthetically, they don't do it for me.
Yeah.
I'd rather have the beautiful capsule of the cork, but practically, and from a kind of just eradicating all risks of the wine changing during the transportation and getting in front of the end user. This is the best technical closure for rosé wines or for white wines or even red wines that don't necessarily require any aging.
Perfect. So screw cap on a rosé.
It's the way to go.
It's the way to go. And the screw cap is a nice sort of reminder to drink this young and fresh. This is not a bottle you would put in a cellar for 10 years, for example, right?
Exactly. It's also great because it's rosé. It's a kind of picnicky wine,
That's
or a barbecue wine. You're out on the deck.
You don't need
a
corkscrew
corkscrew with you, and also you can reseal it. My wife used to like it when we were back in London because she could open the bottle before I got home, not have to wait for me. So it's the best technical closure. It's the most convenient closure, and for Provence Rosé, I think it's the best closure.